Thank you so very much for that introduction and for your warm welcome. Now in the Virgin Islands, we have a way of saying to people we meet at morning, sometimes pleasant good morning, and in the afternoon, pleasant good afternoon. Now, some have told me that by the rules of the English language, this is an unacceptable redundancy, because good is pleasant and pleasant is good. But your being here is good on more than one level. So I believe that in this case, redundancy is acceptable, since we are happy that in these economic times that you have chosen this lovely place to host your conference, thereby injecting our economy much needed funds, right? And two, that by choosing this place to engage in important and vital dialogue for this industry, that you have recognized that the Virgin Islands is poised to play. So having met some of your members in Las Vegas in September of 2014, and others at your reception this past Sunday, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to my home, the beloved United States Virgin Islands, on the occasion of your spring conference, the International Masters of Gaming Law. A pleasant good afternoon. I note that we gather here today, and some of you may know, on the same day that the United States Virgin Islands, an unincorporated territory of the United States, acknowledges the 98th anniversary of the sale of these islands by the Kingdom of Denmark to the United States of America. You might have seen the red flag, the Scandinavian cross, flying at our shores this morning. Rest assured, we're still Americans. No such nation change has taken place. In our parlance, we speak officially of the transfer. This is transfer day in the Virgin Islands. Transfer, a cool, calm, collected way. A contract, an agreed upon transaction, a price, a sale. Although, if you look at the transaction from the point of view of Denmark, you might get the sense that the United States had its hands at Denmark's door. Sell or else. We will get these islands by hook or by crook, by sale or by force. So we were in demand, and we remain in demand. An important American foothold in the Los Angeles, an affiliation that is of strategic importance to the United States and to us. I acknowledge in this room representatives of the various countries that have had a part to play in our historic drama. Germany, whose growth inspired the United States to want a presence in the Caribbean going as far back as the period of the American Civil War. Malta, whose flag flew over these islands as one of the 7 European nations which once claimed sovereignty, including, of course, Denmark, whose history as the motherland was the longest, lasting more than 200 years. And of course, representatives from the various states of the United States. So it has been almost 100 years as a territory administered by the United States, called by various names to include America's Caribbean, America's Paradise. None of those monikers is quite as perplexing or raises as many questions with regard to meaning as does the designation of unincorporated territory, a term I referenced earlier. One of the things it means in layman's terms is that although we are United States citizens by birth, we do not vote for President of the United States, neither do we have a voting representative in the Congress of the United States. Delving deeper into a legal analysis of the term would reveal that as an unincorporated territory, we are not on the path to statehood, right? As are territories identified as incorporated territories, The provisions of the United States Constitution do not automatically apply here, and that Congress has plenary authority with regard to the territories. Plenary, a big word, far-reaching implications. But the first 10 amendments, commonly called the Bill of Rights, they do apply, as does the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. So unlike the Caribbean nations around us, which are our competitors on any number of fronts, we cannot tell our residents what days and how often they may visit casinos or gaming institutions to test their fortunes as they choose. The United States Virgin Islands presents a fascinating landscape. A small place, but a dynamic place, set in a larger region that, though small, was once the center of the world, creating immeasurable wealth by its people and by its soil. We were in demand when the United States identified us for our strategic location, and we remain in demand. The #1 cruise port in the Caribbean, attracting to our shores via both sea and airports almost 3 million visitors annually. And now, with a broadband information infrastructure which can transform us literally into the information superhighway of the world. Not bad for 3 major islands and keys of no more than 133 square miles and roughly 110,000 people. There's hardly a country or nationality that you would not find represented here, and hardly a skill that you could not find. If you think I'm a big cheerleader for the Virgin Islands, you would be absolutely correct. This is a dynamic public policy landscape. Many of us recognize this fact, which places us often in the place of a precarious balancing position. There are paradoxes to unearth and to manage. The issue of gaming is one of those that often produces divergent responses. We have probably more churches per square mile than in most places. In fact, people in the district of St. Thomas, St. John, inspired in no small part by the church-going community, voted several years ago not to have casino gambling on these islands. The arguments were the same as you have probably heard elsewhere, and related to crime and the moral fiber. So I'm sure you would find it as no surprise that some of our residents think us here in this forum doing the work of the devil. But guess what? We have also many, many bars, more per square mile than any other place, right? Quite a paradox. Then add to that, the distinction as having the oldest continuing lottery under the United States flag, the Virgin Islands lottery, 71 years strong. And if we were to be honest with ourselves, we would acknowledge that there are multiple lotteries operating here. Numbers running on par with the glory days of Harlem in illegal lottery sales, such as those connected with the lottery systems of both our neighbor, giant sister territory Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic, a little further away, but a country with which we share history and blood relations. So whether we like it or not, gambling is taking place here. And as policymakers, it is incumbent on us to recognize that and to provide the regulatory framework in which legal activity can take place. We are challenged in these times to create and nurture revenue streams so that we may assure for our people a quality standard of living, and that we as a government provide the infrastructure and services which safeguard the health and welfare of our people. So we have policy making in a landscape which many factors, including a beautiful but fragile natural environment, which from a tourism standpoint, of course, is our selling point. There are places which can afford to have brown water, but ours must be turquoise blue, white sands, clean air. Yet we must sustain our population with circumstances which, because of our territorial distinction, are sometimes beyond our control. Consider, for instance, that one of our major islands is occupied 3/5 by a national park. A national park, which, mind you, continues to grow with the most valuable real estate than most part of the country, but largely removed from the tax base of our government. Another paradox. It is certainly desirous to have a national park which provides green barriers, which limit development and add it to our charm. At the same time, the residents of this particular island see land prices skyrocket, property values skyrocket, and of course, the corresponding steep increases in property taxes. This is the landscape to which I welcome you. We are proud people, possessed of an indomitable spirit. We are patriotic Americans who, since our purchase, have served in every conflict in which this country has found itself, from World War I onward. The numbers will show that per capita, we lead in the numbers of lives which have been sacrificed in the defense of this country and its ideals. We will challenge where necessary. We will continue to push the envelope for the benefit of our own welfare and development. You must note, for instance, our challenge to the United States Department of Justice when it opined at the turn of this century that our Internet Gaming and Gambling Act was in violation of several federal statutes. We maintain that it was and is not, and that interstate gambling by internet or otherwise is a protected commercial activity by residents of any jurisdiction in which such gaming is legal. We remain on the cutting edge as one of only 4 U.S. jurisdictions which have introduced and enacted legislation providing for internet gaming and creating a regulatory framework in which this activity can take place. We realize that this is an evolving area, and so we recognize the value of the work that you do here and elsewhere to define the emerging landscape. In a great sense, we are in your hands. So help us so that we may emerge with manageable systems of regulations which protect private enterprise and safeguard government revenue. Congress passed, and President Barack recently signed into law a comprehensive Coast Guard bill containing a provision which provides the basis for the reconstruction, the rebuilding of the Virgin Islands charter yacht industry, a business which we lost to the British Virgin Islands when the six-pack rule was implemented in 1993. The measure allows for less stringent inspections of vessels carrying as many as 12 passengers and weighing less than 100 tons. That is double the capacity permitted by the earlier six-pack rule. We are now poised, if we act sensibly and quickly, to encourage the return of that immeasurable, that industry that has immeasurable economic impact and activity. We are poised to see its return. And our economy is seeing other positive signs, such as the $100 million project at Margaritaville and St. Thomas, now looking for customers for a planned August opening. And new resort development on the planning board for St. Croix and Water Island. We are glad that you are here. Help us work in a new area. Tell the world about us. And please, come again. Thank you so very much. And enjoy the time.
Thank you very much, Senator. We should try to meet again for the final session of this conference in about 5 minutes. Thank you.